New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment. Inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
I am so glad you're here. Welcome. Welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast to help you learn how to have the highest regard for yourself, how to live from a place of self-respect and self-love, and how to make yourself a priority in your own life. Meet me here each week for curated tips and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks, or at least loosen them a bit, connect with your truest essence, and simply live more easily. Because we know that when we approach life in this way, we naturally have more room, more generosity, and more love for one another. And isn't that what the world needs now? So welcome, welcome, dear hearts, wide receivers, and self-love builders. Tonight, I want to talk to all of the jaw clenchers out there, all of the back achers, shoulder holder-uppers, and the generally knotted up. I want to talk to you. And by the way, I'm in that group as well, though not as much as I used to be, but still. Tonight's conversation, I hope, is one you'll find interesting and relevant to your life. It's called Your Body Knows What's on Your Mind. That's right. Your body knows what's on your mind. How is that possible? Well, we're going to find out. But I'd like to begin by telling you a story, a little personal story. And I'm not going to give you any context at the outset, but I think it'll have meaning as we go. So years ago, when I was in graduate school, my partner and I had just met. We met in graduate school, and it was a few months in, and it was early morning, and this was decades ago, right, when I was in graduate school. But it was early in the morning. I think I was sleeping in, and my partner made breakfast. And when I woke up, I misperceived that she did not make breakfast for me. And I have to say, I had a meltdown. At first, I had a stomach ache. Like, I opened my eyes, I came to consciousness. I thought I smelled eggs cooking or something. I didn't think there was breakfast for me. I instantly had a stomach ache, and then I began to cry in a way that could only be described as a meltdown. And I had no idea what was happening. I just thought I was upset because, I didn't see my eggs there. Now, my partner, then is my partner now, was a very thoughtful person, a very considerate person, and she would no more make breakfast for herself and not make breakfast for me than it just wouldn't happen. But I misread the situation. And I'm going to leave it there for now, but I think we're all in agreement that that reaction was really disproportionate to whatever eggs I thought weren't prepared, and came from some place inside of me that had very little to do with my partner or breakfast. So just keep that on the side. If you've been listening to this show, and in fact, if you're a listener of this station, you no doubt know about the mind-body continuum. You know that the mind and the body are linked, but not just are they linked, they are linked inextricably, meaning they cannot be untangled, disentangled, separated. Some scientists even go so far as to say the mind and the body are one. So when we go through something in our lives, particularly at an early age, and we don't remember necessarily the painful thing, the uncomfortable thing, the thing that made us feel unsafe or insecure, when we don't remember that event, that doesn't mean it doesn't get stored somewhere deep within, because it does. But because the mind and the body are so inextricably linked, if we deny the existence of one, we are damming up the whole process, the whole mechanism by which we move through our emotions. And so that can become very problematic if done over a long period of time. So what happens is, it's interesting because we tend to think of emotions as some sort of abstract, gooey, gauzy, invisible something or other. But in actuality, emotions really begin in the brain. They are actually impulses that travel from the brain through the body, looking for some type of release, some type of expression. That's the normal way in which emotions are, we could say, metabolized or processed. But if we, usually unconsciously, are uncomfortable or afraid to make contact with those emotions, we detach from them. We cut ourselves off from the emotion. And guess what happens, right? It probably is obvious to you. The emotion, that sensory impulse that started in the brain, gets lodged in the body. It gets lodged in the body, quite literally. And that which gets lodged in the body shows up in some sort of way, right? And it usually manifests as a bodily symptom. So when I say jaw clenchers and back achers and the chronically knotted up, I'm talking about the possibility that you may be holding on to, inadvertently, unintentionally, probably unconsciously, holding on to an emotion that you would rather not feel, you would rather not experience, you would rather not revisit. And so, back to my meltdown all those years ago, because I'm introspective and because I was in therapy at the time as a 20-something person, I was very curious about my own reaction, because I observed myself, although my partner was very kind and very understanding, I observed myself having a whopper of a reaction that had no basis in my current reality. So I explored this and I brought this to my therapist, and we really dug, because we could do one of two things. We can approach our emotions like an investigator, like a forensics, investigator, or we can approach our emotions like a judge and a jury and shut it down. But if we approach them like an investigator and lean in with curiosity, we will most likely discover the cause behind our behavior or our symptom. And in therapy, I was able to trace my reaction. What is it about breakfast? I mean, my parents gave me, I came from an Italian family. Food was food. But I had a memory. I had a memory of being in elementary school where we were given breakfast. And for some reason, the nun, happened to be a nun, Catholic school, misread that I spoke when I wasn't supposed to speak. And I was singled out and punished, and I had to sit in front of the class while breakfast was being served to all the other children. You know where this is going. And I wasn't allowed to have breakfast. Now, did I starve? Of course not. Did I make it until lunch? Of course I did. But what do you imagine that experience did to a child? I mean, I was in the primary grades. What do you imagine it did to be deprived breakfast? But it wasn't the breakfast per se. It was the being ostracized. It was being humiliated. It was being punished around that breakfast. So when I thought my partner, and I was totally incorrect about this, but when I thought she was withholding breakfast from me, my memory, that which was imprinted on my unconscious, which, by the way, everything is, it's a memory bank. When my unconscious read that as, here we go again, it's happening to me again, I freaked out with probably the intensity that I had as a child when that happened. I probably sat in the front of the room while everyone else was eating, and I don't know if they were snickering at me, I don't know. But the fact that I'm questioning snicker means I might have thought they were, whether or not that was true. So that made an imprint on my mind and in my body. And I reacted as though I was in the front of that class all over again. So that's an example of what happens when, and by the way, I said I had a stomach ache, like immediately upon, reading or misreading the situation. So I had a stomach ache, and then I had the meltdown. And I have to think that I had a stomach ache back then, enduring that humiliation and that punitive move by that authority figure in the class. So that's an example of a memory that I probably hadn't thought about that memory ever since. But when the breakfast thing came up, my body knew. So I want to talk tonight about the power of detachment. And when I say power, I mean it's so powerfully effective because it spares us in the short term. If we pull the plug on recognizing a painful emotion, in the short term, we don't have to feel uncomfortable or pain or humiliation or whatever the case. But that doesn't mean it disappears. It's lodged somewhere. And in my case, it came out with a stomach ache and crying behavior. So I want to make the case tonight for going in pursuit. If you have these bodily ailments or bodily symptoms, in particular, if you cannot find a cause, if your doctor says, well, you have this condition, you have this symptom, but I can't find any cause, then I invite you, and in fact, I encourage you to give some thought to is your body speaking to you vis-a-vis that symptom? Okay, so just hold on there. Let me see. I see we have Dawn in the chat. Okay, so everybody, Dawn is my partner, and Dawn just, let everybody know that's fine. Dawn says, even if I hadn't made eggs for you too, still a disproportionate reaction. Yeah, even if she didn't make the eggs, a disproportionate reaction, though some feelings would be warranted, like, oh, come on. But that's the most that situation, is called for, even if that, a simple, oh, come on. The belief you had, dare I say, triggered deeper buried emotions. Yeah, of course. Of course. I like that. Investigate with curiosity. I always promote connecting the dots of the present to the past. That's right. Because these emotions, because the being made to sit in the front of the class was a memory that I had not accessed in decades, it was still there. So Dawn is absolutely correct. In our work as therapists, we work backwards. We work from, what is this body telling you? What are your clenched shoulders? What are your migraines? What are your, what is your chronic ankle pain, leg pain? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And if there's not a medical diagnosis, there's a pretty good chance that you're suffering from the, I had to sit in front of the class dilemma, your version of that. Okay. So the point of the story is that unprocessed, unmetabolized emotions make us sick. They give us ailments. They give us emotional, mental ailments. They make us feel depressed. So it is very important. Mental health dictates that we investigate our symptoms, work backwards, and see if we can identify what the cause is. Because whether we have, I made a little list of some of the ways in which our body speaks to us. You can certainly add to these. When we have a knot in our stomach, when our shoulders are up to our ears, when the dentist tells us we're grinding our teeth, when our stomach does flip-flops, when our back is tight or spasms, when our neck is stiff, when we have a dull headache, when we have even blurred vision, which happened to me a number of years ago. I had like a blurred vision, but I had my eyes tested, and the eye doctor said, your vision is 20/20. Yet I remember I was working in Manhattan, and as I would get off the bus and navigate the throngs of people in Port Authority, I felt like my vision was blurry. Came to find out by being an investigator of that symptom that there was like a veil, but it didn't show up on the eye exam. There was a mental, emotional, spiritual veil in front of my consciousness that literally affected my vision. And when I worked through some of those issues at the time, my vision cleared up. And I know other people have done studies. You can look up Carol Look, who was a psychotherapist and a hypnotist and an expert in the field of EFT. She's done some amazing work with vision and its connection to unprocessed emotions. I mean, it's fascinating. So I invite you, we're going to take a break in a minute. I invite you that as we do, you give thought to where in your body might you be experiencing some symptoms. Let me say hello to Leandra. Hi, Leandra. Welcome. Your story is a great example of an unhealed wound, reminding us that it remains unhealed. That's right. And Leandra, let's imagine how many of us are walking around with unhealed wounds. Now, if Dawn wasn't the person she is, if she had reacted to me from her unhealed wounds, maybe she has an unhealed wound about somebody yelling at her, okay? If she reacted to me from her wound, then can you imagine the combustion that we would have had? There I was, angry, enraged, dejected, rejected, crying. And then if she would have countered that with her own anger and maybe tried to shut me down or something like that, it would have been what a lot of couples actually come into therapy with, this kind of blame and really holding the other responsible for their pain, having no idea that what's at play, as Leandra said, are these unhealed wounds. I find this fascinating. Let me know if you do too. Janine, welcome. Simple things can feel so loaded sometimes. Core memories can come to the surface at the oddest times with or without physical symptoms. Core memories can come to the surface at the oddest times. Yeah, the oddest times because they sneak up on us with or without physical symptoms. Yeah, well, when these memories come to the surface, I wonder, Janine, if you can point to anything else that accompanies those memories. In other words, is it just a picture in your head of the movie you're running? Is there nothing happening in your body, or is there a blankness? That would be a question I might ask a client if a client, came in with that. But it's really very interesting. The operative point there, Janine, is that the oddest times when we least expect it. Absolutely. Still, Bill, I remember my trauma of, relating God to my, yes. I remember my trauma of relating God to my dad. Relating God to my dad. Well, if you're talking about kind of equating, because this is what we do, one authority figure for another. If your dad was punitive or emotionally unavailable or harsh or made you feel unsafe, or made you feel like you were only as good as your, as the good boy that you were, then it's very easy to transfer that to other people, other authority figures, and even God. Then God must be a punitive father. So, there's a saying, don't trust everything you think. I mean, it's really about examining and being an investigator of the things that have happened to us. Okay, Janine, you're I have to say, I love this conversation. I love the opportunity to have a dialogue, and I love the crosstalk that you have with one another. So, Janine, the unreasonable crying is the physical symptom, perhaps. Yeah, I did have a stomach ache. Realizing that it's not rational. This definitely happens for me and seems to come out of nowhere. The reason it comes out of nowhere, well, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's very valid and has a very legitimate storyline in the unconscious, wherever that memory comes from. That memory comes from a real live event. But if we're detached from it, disconnected from it, then it will find its daylight. The first time Dawn doesn't make eggs for you, it will find its daylight and bubble up to the surface. And when it does, it's very intense. Why? Because of all the years it's been tamped down. Again, emotions are not gooey, hazy nothings. Emotions are sensory impulses. They're real things. And if they are dammed up and tamped down, they intensify. They intensify. Try as we may to forget about them, to keep them at bay. They are locked inside of us and they gain steam. And so when they come out of nowhere, they usually come with, quite a lot of intensity. Thank you, Janine. And still, Bill. Aloha. Just Judy, there are always going to be triggers in our lives. We can't live with empty brains. 1000%. The goal is not to stop the triggers. How are you going to stop the world from spinning? How are you going to stop people from being people? That's not the goal. The goal, I believe, is to be accountable and handle our own triggers. In my meltdown, I was blaming my partner for the way I felt. Now, did she deserve that? Absolutely not. Was she anywhere in that storyline for real? No. Who was my real beef with? Who did I really feel hurt by? That, that nun in whatever grade it was, second or third grade. She's the one that my anger was directed toward. And when I was in therapy and I could align the object of my emotions with the emotion itself, then I had a clear shot to processing and then resolving that emotion. And what does it mean to resolve? Obviously, it doesn't mean have amnesia. I can still remember the story. I don't feel that worked up. I don't know, do I sound worked up? I mean, I can talk about it without having a meltdown. Let's put it that way. So to resolve it means to look at the situation compassionately, have, as I discussed once before, something that I call compassionate recognition, have compassion for myself as I understand what happened there. Oh, the nun did this and that made me feel how, and gee, was that fair? Was that fair to any second grader? Absolutely not. Who was at fault there? Was I at fault as a little girl? No. Was the nun at fault? She was. She was. Now, perhaps she thought she was teaching me a life lesson. Perhaps she was disciplining from her wounded self. Perhaps she was on the receiving end of, behavior like that. So she passed it down. And that's where the cycle, I could have potentially internalized that indefinitely and then went about blaming people for her transgression. But I think I broke that cycle when I investigated this in my own therapy. So this is what happens. Judy, we cannot stop the triggers, but we can be responsible for what it is in each of us that gets hooked and then gets activated. Okay? And this is what we mean when we say we can learn to respond rather than react. When you have insight, when you have the awareness, when you connect the dots, as Dawn said, you can be in a much better position to respond rather than knee-jerk react as I did. So when we resolve something, we understand it, we understand who is at fault, we have compassion, and then we can place the memory in its rightful place. And when we do that, that too isn't just gobbledygook. That is placing the memory in the part of the brain that actually is responsible then for long-term memory and the region of the brain that actually, you want to call it digests. I'm not sure what the neurological term is, but this is brain activity. This isn't just nicey nice. So the next time you find yourself overreacting, ask yourself, what's up? The other person may have triggered me, but that means I was triggerable. And what's that about? So this is a mouthful. Let's take a break. And when we come back, I'll talk a little bit more. And then if there's time, I'll take a question. Pay attention to where in your body you might be feeling things or what your Achilles is. Is it your jaw? Is it your back? Is it your head? Is it your stomach? Is it your foot? Pay attention, because body language, your body's talking to you. I'll meet you back here in a few minutes. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network. Stay with me.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Welcome to Science of Mind Archives, your gateway to spiritual wisdom. Join us for our grand opening gala. Experience a weekend of inspiration. Enjoy a ribbon-cutting ceremony, a gala dinner and workshops, plus a labyrinth walk and town hall. Connect with a community of seekers. Explore spiritual teachings and resources. Find your path to personal growth. Join us from April 24th to 27th. Lodging options are still available. Visit our website www.scienceofmindarchives.com for more details. Please RSVP by March 15th. Featuring Reverend Jesse Jennings, musical inspirations with Karen Drucker, and the spirit of Ernest Holmes. Come celebrate our new home at Unity Village, Lee's Summit, Missouri, and please visit www.scienceofmindarchives.com.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are talking about how the body knows what's on the mind, and we have scrambled some eggs, and we are better understanding the connection between the mind and the body and how to best go about processing our emotions. So I am going to take a question. Oh, I see we have somebody in the chat. Hello, Patricia. Welcome. Once I was in a relationship for, and my love was unrequited. I had symptoms of chronic fatigue until the doctor told me I was fit and asked who, if someone was causing it, and to let them go. I did. Oh, okay. Once in a relationship, your love was unrequited. You had symptoms of chronic fatigue until the doctor told me I was fit and asked who, if someone was causing that, and to let them go. Well, I'll tell you something. Bravo for that doctor. Bravo for that doctor. More and more doctors are appreciating the role of childhood trauma, childhood wounds, unprocessed emotions, and they are asking their patients about it. So, Patricia, so glad to hear about that. Gosh, I can do a whole show on unrequited love because I don't think there's anything that gets at childhood wounds like pining for someone wanting someone, desperate for someone's attention, someone to love you back, want you back, and that doesn't happen. That can really, really intensify the wound of having perhaps an emotionally unavailable parent. I'm talking in general terms. So, Patricia, glad to hear about that, and glad you moved on. You're here. Okay, so let's go to a question. This question came in from my newsletter this morning. Brutal. It is brutal, Patricia. If you'd like to be included on my email list and get a copy every Sunday morning at 5 a.m., just email me, Catherine@catherineduca.com, and just put "add me" in the subject line, and I'll know exactly what you're asking for, and you'll get the next copy. So this comes from Nora. This is a really very interesting question. I've been feeling really numb and blank inside lately. So the opposite of activated. I've been feeling really numb and blank inside lately. I don't feel any strong emotions, whether it's happiness, sadness, or anything in between. It's like I'm just going through the motions of daily life without any sense of purpose or feeling. What could be causing this, and how can I start to feel more alive and connected to my emotions again? Not only is that a good question, Nora, but it's one that I hear all the time. You know, a good way to find out how connected or not you may be to your emotions is just to ask yourself on any given day, any given time, how do I feel? How do I feel right now? If you don't know, that could be a clue that you're in some level of emotional disconnection. So when a client comes in and they tell me that they feel blank or numb, it's really so fascinating to me. I know I say that a lot. I'm fascinated by human behavior and the privilege that it is to engage with people around what hurts them or bothers them. Blankness and numbness, you might think is the absence of something, but it really isn't the absence of something. Blankness and numbness is, I look at it as it is a form of anesthesia. It's a form of anesthesia. So when a client comes in and says, I feel blank, I say, okay. And I ask them just to, be willing to be blank with me. Are you willing to be blank with me for a few more minutes? And then I ask them to tell me, if they can, what that feels like in the body, in particular from the neck down. Just as a starting point. Some people do get symptoms in their head, but when I say from the neck down, I'm trying to discourage intellectualizing, which is when we go up in our heads and we reason out our emotions. That's not really being in touch with them. Being in touch with emotions is being in touch with the bodily feeling about the emotion, the actual sensation in the body. So I'll say I could say to Nora, if you're listening, what does the blankness feel like? Sometimes people will say, people rarely say it feels like nothing. People say, hey, it feels heavy. I feel a heaviness. Or I feel a darkness. Now you might say, well, darkness is visual, but I'll go with that. I feel a darkness. I might ask them, what does it look like? Darkness, smooth edges, jagged edges, black. What does that look like? Okay. And then I say, and this is, I think, pretty important. I say, may I be here with you in that dark space? May I be here with you in what feels heavy and otherwise indescribable? Can we be here together in that? And actually something usually, if not always, happens in that exchange. Something about my connection, my willingness, and my wanting to connect with the person in that state begins to move them, begins to open them up. Why? I'll tell you, 9 out of 10 times, if not all the time, an emotional wound is created by another person or people. And so, I mean, inanimate objects don't hurt us, you know. Yes, there can be a trauma like a natural disaster, but most of the time, emotional wounds are caused by a breach in a human interaction. Therefore, I believe it takes another human interaction to begin to heal it. So when I say to the client, may I be here with you, the very act of reaching over and connecting mentally puts the person oftentimes in contact with who didn't do that for them. Do you see? My willingness to connect brings in sharp relief the connection that person may not have had with a caretaker in childhood. They might have had an emotionally unavailable parent, or an immature parent, or a well-meaning but ill parent, or an addicted parent, or an overwhelmed parent. Or it might have had perfectly fine, healthy parents, but went to another environment like a school. I think that was my thing, where the atmosphere was very harsh and punitive and humiliating. And that's what got under my skin. So to this day, when someone offers me gentleness and kindness, all these years later, it cuts through the remnants of that experience in childhood. So, Nora, the possible reasons why you might be feeling that way, which is so isolating, is because you are self-protecting. Self-protecting. You're using suppression and detachment. These are all defense mechanisms. They have, it's terminology, and for some it may be, kind of ominous terminology, but it's just a defense mechanism. Ways in which the unconscious tried to protect you. Pour a numbing agent, if you will, over your feelings so you don't feel them. That put you in a disconnected state as a child. This doesn't mean you didn't go out and play. You did. But interpersonally, particularly in intimate relationships, that wall, protective wall, manifests itself. And I have to say, these walls don't get better with time or with age. They actually get stronger. And our numbing agents become even more intractable until and unless we become CSI investigators with our own lives and look to the root of what could be causing this. So working with someone whom you trust, whom you feel safe with, could be the very thing that brings you out of that numbing and that isolated state. Now, what can you do when you're by yourself? Well, here's an exercise that I recommend frequently. There actually are 2 or 3. One is to take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On one side, describe bullet points your life as it is now, especially your inner life. So let's say, Nora, you could put numb, blank, empty, don't feel anything, no purpose, on one side. And then on the other side, of course, you would put what you imagine your inner life would be if you were more connected. if you were less numb? And then we look at, okay, so this is how you feel. This is how you would like to feel. What do you think is in the way? What do you think is an intellectual question, but I'm just stating it, that we are going to go in pursuit of what is in the way. The question behind that is, and you can ask yourself this, is how would I feel? This is important. How would I feel if I open up just a little bit on the way to feeling, that's that column on the right-hand side, on the way to feeling more alive, more engaged, more purposeful, like I have more meaning in my life, more enlivened. On the way to feeling that, what do I think I might encounter when I think about opening up? I'm afraid to open up, or someone will think I'm a baby, or someone will think someone will judge me, or I don't know. I'm too afraid to open up. You're afraid to open up. Okay. When someone tells me they're afraid to do something, I get excited, because fear is very dynamic. Fear is in place to tell you something. So you always want to say, okay, I'm afraid. What might I be afraid of? And just see what comes to mind. So you're gently leaning in to the blankness or the emptiness. You're leaning in with a sense of curiosity. And it may not come all at once. It probably won't come all at once. But what you're telling yourself is, first of all, you are worth having a different experience of your life. And you're telling yourself, the minute we can label a problem, I feel blank, I feel numb, instantly we are bigger than that experience, because our higher self, our consciousness is looking at this aspect of our lives. And in that distance is a bit more objectivity. And that's where we can begin to get in and work on these things. Without doing that, we're just kind of one-dimensional. I'm just shut down. I'm just shut down. So you can journal. And when I say journal, by the way, this is interesting because someone asked me this week. Someone said, well, I journaled for a couple of minutes. I know why I'm angry. Journal for more than a couple of minutes. Why? Because when you journal about an experience, in the first few minutes, you're just going to get what is obvious. But the more you write, hand to paper, by the way, is better than typing, the more you will go below the surface, and you're much more likely to come upon something just around the edges. And that's what we want to do. We want to meet these things around the edges. No geysers, no jumping off the high dive. It's too much. Well, first of all, your defense mechanisms won't let you do that, thankfully. So it's a very gentle process. But this is one of the ways in which we work with ourselves. We work with the strange things we feel that come out of nowhere. And we work with our own body language. This is why life is never boring. Because as long as you have a self, you have a whole landscape to explore and to appreciate. So there you have it, listeners, friends, wide receivers, self-love builders. There you have it. The body always knows what we're talking about. So I invite you all this week to reflect on this and pay attention to your body, befriend your body. Your body will help your mind, which will in turn help your body. That's a wonderful feedback loop to be a part of, to generate with yourself. So with that, I invite you to, if you want to learn more about this, you can order my book. It's the heart of my work. It's called Unmasked, Discover the Hidden Power of Your True Self. You can get that on Amazon, or you can write to me if you'd like a signed copy. I'd be happy to get that out to you. Have a good week. Have a good, intentional, self-aware week. And I will meet you back here where we will go even deeper into the art of self-love. Thank you so much for joining me. You've been listening to Who Do You Think You Are here on New Thought Media Network. Have a good night.